Joel, thank you so much for joining us today. Hope you're doing well.
Thank you. Yeah, glad to be with you. It's an honor.
So, most of my listeners have been following you for a long, long time, but some are new to all of this. So, just if you could start off by just please give us a very brief description of who you are, what you care about, and why.
Brief. Okay. Well, I'm Joel Salatin. Our family has Polyface Farm here in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley. We're in pastured livestock, beef, pork, chicken, ducks, lamb, rabbits, timber, lumber, and we direct market everything um, to retail and ship nationwide. And our family came here when I was 4 in 1961. Mom and Dad bought the core farm. We've now bought two adjoining properties and expanded the land base, and we rent some land as well. But it was the most gullied rock pile in the area, very, very cheap land in 1961. And over the years, we've gradually healed the gullies, planted a lot of trees, built a lot of ponds, made a lot of compost, and arguably turned it into, from the armpit of the community to one of the nicer places, more productive places. And so being part of that land healing is when people say, what gets you up every morning? It's to step out the back door and realize that I have the honor and privilege of being hands and feet of the Creator, as a steward, a caretaker of his possessions, which I believe the physical creation is an object lesson of spiritual truth. And so what I want is for people to come and visit the farm and say, "Oh, now I know what forgiveness is. Now I know what redemption is. Now I know what abundance is." Now, that's the idea. Is that this is just a great, great big object lesson of spiritual understanding.
Yeah, I love that. And when you talk about that stuff, it's so inspiring. And you're so good at that. And you spend a lot of time talking, right? What
Yeah.
at this point, what would you say? How much of your time is spent just educating, speaking, and that sort of stuff? And how much time do you get to be on the farm doing what you started out doing, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm on the farm about 2/3 of the time, and I'm gone about a third of the time. So it's a very heavy travel schedule. Uh, but it comes and it fits in spurts. Here the month of August, I'm actually home the whole month. September and October, I think I'll only be home about 10 days of each of those 2 months. So it really is, feast and famine, and it varies, where the conferences and the different things are going on. And so, yeah, I love being here on the farm. I don't know, I just, this is my, for sure, this is my therapy. And I'm still Chief Chainsaw Guy. In fact, when we get finished with this, I've got to go out and cut about six pretty big poplar trees for a poplar order that a neighbor asked to put siding on his outbuilding. And so I've got to, they still ask me to cut the trees, and I very much enjoy it. It's nice to have at least one thing that everybody thinks you're better at than anybody else.
There you go. Yeah. So, the overarching theme of this season of the podcast is building community. Okay. So, could you just real quickly paint us a picture of what your community looks like and how it is so vital to what you all are doing at the farm at Polyface?
Yeah, so now on the farm here, we have a team now of about 22 full-time positions. There are more than 22, but we have some part-time stuff, so I'm just, condensing everything to full-time equivalents. About 22 of us, and not everybody's a farmer, or actually actively farming. That includes accounting. Somebody has to write the checks. We have a full-time maintenance technician. We have a full-time mechanic. We have several part-time salespeople who make sales calls. Obviously, we have my we have a publicity, a lady that kind of screens emails and phone calls and sends them to the right person, so you have kind of that. Then you have social media. You have inventory. Obviously, we've got a huge amount of inventory. We've got inventory. We've got a couple of full-time people that knew nothing but fulfillment. They're packing boxes. They're answering emails. Those kinds of things. And so the point here's the point I'm going to make. The point I'm going to make is that a functional community requires a lot of gifts and talents that no individual has. That's why a community works. And so we have people here on the team that in a normal life I wouldn't be friends with necessarily. I mean, just because we have different interests and different things, but because we share a common goal here, we're thrown together in this common cause, this common objective, and we become friends. And now yesterday morning I was out moving the shade mobile for the cows, and the hitch broke, and I got it moved, but I pulled the broken hitch off, put it on the tractor, brought it in, and so when Buzz, our maintenance tech, came in, I just handed him the two broken pieces and said, here it is, and it's up in the field. And this morning when I went to move it, it was all fixed, brand new, better than ever, and all was well. And I could have fixed it. But he did a better job and did it faster than I would have. And that's a real blessing. So, the whole idea of community is to recognize that all the gifts and talents for success don't grow on the same pair of legs. They never have, and they never will. And teams are always more efficient at accomplishing things than individuals, because you need those things that you're not good at. And so we have on our team, we have I'm the chief chainsaw guy. We have another guy that's really good at horticulture. Another gal that has sheep, and she's really good at that. And and then you have mechanics, and so together you have a whole. And that's kind of, and then to facilitate that. So there's about 25 of us who actually now live here on the farm. That includes children. And we several years ago, we jumped off the cliff and we began hiring a summer chef for when our stewards are here. Stewards is a 5-month program. Most people would call it internships. We call it stewardship because that more accurately describes what we're about, stewardship. And so these stewards come from May 1 to September 30. And to facilitate the familial community aspect of what we're trying to do, the team, we jumped off the cliff and hired a full-time chef for those 5 months to do our cooking, so that we can all on weekday evenings, we all assemble at 6:15 and we all eat together at the pavilion. And we can, it gives us time to obviously get a great meal, but it also, gives us time to just fellowship, and we can talk about what happened in the day, talk about what's going to happen tomorrow. And it's just a wonderful familial thing. So about 25 of us eat together every day. And then, of course, when we have visitors and friends and dignity people visit from around the world, we invite them to eat with us. And so our young people are able to meet, gurus and icons in the movement, because they're friends with us, that they would never be able to meet one-on-one and rub shoulders with. And that's a wonderful thing. Just 2 weeks ago, we had our first Polyface Intensive Discovery Seminar of the season. We have 3 a year, and that first one was the first one we exclusively did for Navy SEALs. So we had about 25 Navy SEALs and about 8 spouses come with them. and it was an exclusive Navy SEALs. We've never done an exclusive for a group like that before, but
Mm.
they wanted an exclusive for them, and we said, yeah, that's okay. And so to spend those 2 days, all of our young people to be able to rub shoulders, eat with, enjoy, um, that kind of caliber of person, you just don't get that in everyday life. And to get that concentrated an experience is profound and powerful.
Yeah, yeah. So the main thing I want to do with this interview is talk about your book, Family Friendly Farming. You wrote it more than 20 years ago, and it's basically a manual for how to keep the kids from leaving the farm. And for any listeners out there that might start tuning out because you don't live on a farm, the principles in the book can be applied to any business, any family business, right? So we'll get into more detail about the book as we go along, but just broad strokes. 20 years since you've wrote this book, how have those years gone? What worked for you? I mean, it seems like you have success, right? Daniel's there on the farm. I mean, he's
Yep.
probably just mostly running things at this point.
Yeah.
So that's an obvious answer to that question. But what maybe also did you learn that you didn't necessarily anticipate back then when you wrote this book 20 years ago?
Yeah. Well, I guess the naivety of that time when I wrote the book was that we could actually make it happen. And everybody's got different interests, and we were very, very blessed that Daniel took this and ran with it. And yeah, absolutely, he's 40. What is he? 43 now. And he runs the farm, so I can run around. And I'm the least needed person, day to day operations on the farm. I'm the least needed, um, and which is kind of cool. And so, let me just say about that somebody says, well, what if he hadn't said, you didn't have six kids, what do you do then? And I don't think I put it in the book, but when the kids got older, up into their later teen years, I made it very clear to them that Teresa and I would be 100% cheerleader no matter what they ever wanted to do with their lives. But if they didn't want to be here, we would actively seek a young person to leave it to. In other words, we made it clear we weren't gonna leave them all this equity just to sell and roll off into the sunset with a pile full of money. Said the farm, the land is way too valuable for that. And again, fortunately, Daniel jumped onto it. But today we have a cadre of young people now, young families with children, uh, um, who are who are they're virtually family. I mean, we haven't formally adopted them, but we certainly view them, the farm, the business, the legacy, let me say it that way, the legacy objective. Um, the legacy objective is there for whoever wants to jump on it. And I think that's what I'd like to say right here, because I don't want parents to feel like they have to force their children into boxes. But um, but what we do need to do is offer a platform that if they want to join, they know they're welcome. That if they want to join, there's a place for them. They can earn a salary. We're not sitting here about scarcity. No, it's an abundance mentality. And finally, at the end of the day, um, even Jesus said that my mission is even more important than my family. He and I don't want to say that like I you know don't care about family, but I do think that when we are convinced of that calling on our life, to develop an objective, to develop a mission. And I'm not saying, the typical nonprofit mission. No, I mean a mission like our business is a mission. We're in the mission to heal land. We're in the mission to serve people. We're in the mission to present an object lesson of God's divine sustenance and provision. That's our mission, and that mission is sacred and big enough to attract people, whether it's our children or somebody else's children, other young people, and that's the way I like to position it. And yeah, life takes funny turns, and you can't figure it all out, but you can have in your own heart of hearts a mission that drives purpose, sacred enough and meaningful enough that it attracts the next generation, whatever that looks like.
Right. Yeah. And so you talk a little bit about this in chapter 20 of the book. So you're talking about multiple use infrastructure, but the point is, as opposed to like conventional farms where you have these silos, these containment houses that they're so big and they're expensive, they almost necessitate debt to maintain. And that's not desirable to the next generation, right? So you talked about having flexibility, offering them an easy out. And it almost seemed counterintuitive when I read that, but it was so intriguing because you're giving them, you're treating the children with an open hand. You're giving them an easy out. You're saying, you're not bogged down by this. You're not looking at us being bogged down and stressed out. This is something that it's here for you. It's flexible. You can walk away from it real easily because you're not building all this infrastructure. You're moving with the land. You're rotating stuff. You're not building fences everywhere. You're moving fences and you're doing what the land wants to do. And so and your point was, that's intriguing for the kids. That gives them something to want to join. And you were just describing where that's sort of for you turned from just a family thing to really a community thing that other people are drawn to. And so the kids are drawn to it. Other people are drawn to it. And it's almost this even more beautiful thing than really what you were describing in the book, but it's developed into something a little bit more.
Yeah, when I wrote that book, I had absolutely no idea that today, I'd be eating dinner every evening with 25 people.
It's amazing.
I absolutely no idea. And so to speak to that, two things, I think, because there is a tremendous amount of successional tension right now, especially in agriculture. The average farmer is 60 years old. And so just daily almost, I have, I get reach outs about people that are struggling with this whole successional thing. I had an email just the other day, a couple, how do you know when you're too old to continue doing it? Our kids don't want it. They're gone. It's back to the two of us. And I, at the end of these seminars that we do, I often can't get through it without weeping, to point out, and I say this as we kind of adjourn the 2-day seminar. On the last day, we have one of our apprentices talk to the folks and give them their story. What brought you here? Because we just have the best young people in the world. It is the cream of the crop. There's not a CEO who ever visits here, and in 10 minutes they pull me aside and say, "Where do you get these people?" They're just the best of the best. And so I always have one of them address folks, and when they get done, of course, there's hardly a dry eye, and I make the point. I say, most farmers, when they're my age, are the most alone they've ever been in their life. And it's one thing to be alone when you're 20. When you're 20, you're invincible. You can, you'll live forever, and you can, conquer mountains.
Right.
But when you get 70 and you're alone, that's a different ball game.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me to be surrounded by this youthful zest and enthusiasm, and as our son Daniel says, the passion transfer, to have these, I can call them kids, they're in their 20s, but when they come up to you and say, "Oh, I get to gather eggs today? You mean really? I get to gather eggs?" And, yeah, yeah, you can gather eggs. And it makes us old fogies realize how special this all is.
Yeah.
It's not every person that gets to go out and gather eggs, and so that passion transfer is just so powerful, and so to have that community surrounding me at this point in my life is just the greatest blessing of all. And think about this, historically, the way tribes, and I'll say the word tribes, garnered wealth was the elders leveraged their experience and wisdom on the young. Um, the elders sitting there, in the tent saying, "Well, now I remember in '59 that blizzard that came through, and the cows went to that east pasture up there, and it's yeah." And so the old guy's not going to take the cows up there. He's going to send a couple of young bucks up there, right, to take the cows to that secluded pasture.
Yeah.
But it's the elder wisdom and experience that remembers, that has that. And so that's why F-15 pilots all have to get out of the cockpit by the time they're about 45, because your mortality starts to hit you, when you pass 40.
Right.
And but what you want the old 60-year-old general back there, telling you where to go.
Hmm.
And that's the beauty of the multi-generational community.
Yeah. So, in the book, you talk about what you call the 10 commandments for making kids love the farm. I love that. It's so good. And most of them are pretty straightforward, like love what you do, praise the kids, maintain humor, all these things that will make the kids enjoy what you're doing and they're going to enjoy it too. But one was number 4, I thought was very insightful. And again, it almost seemed counterintuitive. Well, maybe not counterintuitive, but it was create investment opportunities. So I'll just read a little excerpt that you wrote in the book. You said, investment always stimulates long-term commitment. As soon as dad knew I wanted to farm, he quit buying things. If we needed a new piece of equipment, I bought it. If we needed a building permit for a building, I went down and got it in my name. So, what kind of stories can you tell us about how you've implemented, those were your examples. How have you implemented this with your kids, or even, the apprentices? Have they been able to get in on any of that too?
Oh, yeah, wonderful. So with our own kids, I'm a huge believer in somewhere between 8 and 10 years old. Every child, ideally, every child should have a business. And I started my chickens when I was 10. And so our two kids, Daniel started his rabbits when he was 8. Our daughter Rachel started her baking business when she was about 7. Girls are always ahead of boys. But my point is that both of our kids, and then when Rachel turned about 12 or 13, we homeschooled, and we were friends with another homeschool family whose daughter had started a house cleaning business, and she was 18 and kind of aging out and going on to other things. And Rachel had started helping her. And so she basically bequeathed her house cleaning business to Rachel, mainly, elderly people. So here's Rachel, she can't even drive yet. Teresa's carting her around to these things. And of course, she becomes the darling of these elderly ladies that want to sit and talk. And I mean, it's just a wonderful thing. The point is that both of our kids, and they're both now, Daniel's over 40, Rachel's not quite, hit 20 years old. So this is, more than 20 years ago. They both hit 20 with $20,000 in the bank in their own checking accounts, and they never got an allowance. In other words, they earned it. So
Mm-hmm.
they knew the value of a dollar. And they're both very charitable, actually. They love giving money away to, good needs, and tithing and all that. So that it's not like they're, stingy with it, but they're both incredibly, astute about working hard, being conscientious, and the power of that. So they had their own business. Daniel had his rabbits, Rachel had her baking, and then the cleaning business. So then our grandkids come along, and all three of those had, one of them had lambs, one of them had ducks, one of them had exotic chickens, and we've carried that on to our staff, where we have a very open door policy that if anybody on our team can conceive of an enterprise that's complementary to what we're doing as a side hustle, maybe you're getting a salary, maybe you're a 1099, whatever, so you're getting a paycheck, but the point is that if you can conceive of a complementary, non-competitive enterprise, then we want you to pursue it. And so we have people that have done mushrooms, produce, garden. We had a guy that got an old 1910 grain mill and made a Bloody Butcher cornmeal and sold it here in our store. We've got one of our folks, taps, does about 100 maple tree taps a year, and sells some maple syrup. Another one does cosmetics, from our pork lard and beef tallow, cosmetics. Another one's does a hospitality. One of the couples that lives here on the farm, they've been here the longest. They approached me and said, "We've never done overnight stays. Could we dip our toe in the hospitality a little bit?" I said, "Sure." So they bought a little old tiny house that somebody had not finished it out. We agreed on a site. They parked it up there. So this is not Airbnb or Venmo or anything like that. This is just through the Polyface website. That thing is full. It's open 8 months of the year. It's called the Tiny Stay. So it's their business. They book it, they run it, they do everything. We've got another gal that does tours, farm tours, personal tours. You want to come for a personal tour, and again, she's a 1099. It's her business. She does school tours, anniversary tours. If you want to come see the farm, and a personal tour, she does the grass stains tours. It's her business. And so I could go on and on, but I hope you appreciate that we are so many businesses, they're almost fearful of ideas, of somebody, coming up with some idea that like it threatens the brand, but here, what we want to do is we want to have a germination tray to sprout as many complementary enterprises as the skill and passion of our team can imagine.
Yeah. So reading through the book, it almost seems like a tagline could be why kids leave commercial farms. So that would be putting it in the negative, because you have so many examples of commercial farming, containment houses, what you call fecal concentration camps. It's not conducive to all of these things, these positive elements that you're talking about with how you run the farm and what you want the future to look like. I guess you've already done this, but tell us a little bit about why your farm is different and more conducive to the next generation than those commercial farms.
Okay. Well, well, one thing is for sure that this is a very people-centric farm. I mean, we direct market, so we have a loyal customer base that from day one always, came up to our little kids and said, thank you, for what your family does. Our family depends on you for our health and our life. And this bolsters the kids. The kids, instead of being, just part of a great big food cog, some global food cog, they're now looking at a person in the eye who's pinching their cheek and telling them, we appreciate you. What you do is important. And so the people centricity, a lot of farmers are hermits, they don't want anybody around. And so by interacting this much with what we produce and having that level of gratitude and appreciation expressed not to us, but to the kids as they were growing up, that's a very big difference. Nobody comes out to visit a Tyson farm to tell the children of a Tyson farmer, we appreciate you raising chickens for us. They just don't. And nobody wants to go there because it stinks. So, it's not a happy place to be.
Yeah.
Which brings me to number two would be that our farm is aesthetically and aromatically, sensually romantic. It doesn't stink. It's not, you're not the, you're not the kid in school that everybody's kind of, pulling up their nose and where'd you just come in, the hog barn? And so just the beauty of it,
Yeah.
is a big deal. And I would say thirdly that we, because of the ecology that we've created, planting trees on the steep hillsides and building ponds, there's a tremendous amount. I'm thinking of a child. There's a tremendous amount of ecological excitement. You can fish. I mean, like our other family is living here on the farm that's not related to us at all. They have 4 children. Their oldest son is now 9, and boy, he is a fish. I mean, he catches big old bass out of these ponds. I mean, he spends hours and hours fishing. Now he knows how to work, but building dams in the creek, forts in the woods, swinging the hay rope in the hay mow. I mean, these are life, they're life lessons. And so it's just an interesting place to be because you can come up on a wild turkey and pick up a little poult. Only if it's less than 2 days old. Time it gets more than 2 days old, you can't run them down. But
Sure.
2 days old, you can pick them up. Seeing fawns. I mean, the magnificence and mystery and majesty of just creative diversity is a powerful thing, as opposed to just square miles of corn or just big houses of pigs, that sort of thing.
Great. So you've got kids, you've got grandkids, you've got these other kids from other families that aren't related to you running around on the farm. You talk in the book about greenhouse kids. Are these all greenhouse kids? Are they all homeschooled? I mean, talk just real briefly for the listeners. So, greenhouse kids is a greenhouse. You want to give your plants a good start in life, right? You start your seeds out there, you give them a good start, and then they grow better once they get out and hardened off and put out outside. And it's the same thing with kids. You want to give them a good start, and then they'll blossom and grow better. So
you got to realize that we started homeschooling before there was a Homeschool Legal Defense Association. Before, I mean, we're talking about 35 years ago we began homeschooling or more. And so there wasn't that, there were no homeschool conventions, there was no Michael Ferris, there was no, none of this stuff going on. And so we were accused at that time a lot about, well, how are you going to socialize your kids? You got greenhouse kids. They're not exposed to the world, as if and use it as a negative thing. And the more I thought about it, I said, no. I'm gonna stand unapologetically for the benefit of greenhouse kids, because the whole idea of a greenhouse is that your plants actually excel because they are in a more nurturing environment. And so by the time they get legs under them, and in the case of plants, roots under them and leaves, then you get them outside, but they're a month ahead of the ones that you out there planted by seed and got buffeted by the wind and the cold and all the things. And so I am very, very unapologetic about raising greenhouse kids. That's how they get a jump on them. And our family had a bunch of teachers in it, aunts and uncles and grandparents and stuff, and it was pretty dicey there early on. But it was funny as the kids hit 11 and 12 years old, and the cousins and the other young people their age are doing what they do. our kids quickly became the favorite because they looked you in the eye. They had interesting stuff to talk about. They were just fun to be with, And so, my dad unfortunately died very, very young. He was 66 when Daniel was only 5 years old. He just barely remembers him. And but we had about five gentlemen in the community who basically just became surrogate grandfathers and took Daniel hunting and fishing and different things, and introduced him to John Wayne and you know all this stuff that I just um I didn't have the inclination to do. And but he was a fun kid, and Rachel, same thing.
Yeah.
uh and so the greenhouse, um they weren't distracted with TV. They weren't distracted with all the peer dependency and fashion and all the things that other people had. And so they were simply interesting to an older generation. And as both of them say, even though they're both basically millennials, they're more like World War II generation.
Yeah, I'm not going to compare myself with Daniel, but you said he's 43, so he's got 1 year on me. And they try to pigeonhole me in the millennial group, and I'm like, I didn't have I mean, I did not grow up flipping with an iPhone. I did
Yeah,
not.
yeah,
I don't think
right,
that way, and I
right.
feel blessed to be just outside of that. But yeah, it's
Hmm.
a real thing. I mean, people, their brains are wired certain way when they grew
Hmm.
up in the cities with all these screens all the time, and they're not outside, they're not playing, they're not growing things and seeing how God's creation works. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So we talked about 10 commandments, but there's another 10 list of 10 in your book. You talk about 10 deadly destructive deeds, and they are conventionalism, secrecy, manhandling, disinterest, doting, perfectionism, authoritarianism, bagging, screaming, and inconsistency. So let's get real for a minute. Which one of these, or a few if you want, have you struggled with over the years, and how have you overcome that struggle?
Ooh, wow. Probably the most difficult one for me has been the not screaming, but kind of um, uh, bagging or being judgmental. I mean, I got pretty strong beliefs on some things. Some things are right or wrong, and and that edge has definitely come off over the years. I've become um, uh, much more gentle in that respect. And I think that's wisdom. That's age. You're young, you're a firebrand, and I couldn't have accomplished what I did if I hadn't been a bit of a firebrand. But I well remember the turning point for me came two instances. One, I blew up at an apprentice.
Hmm.
The cows had gotten out, and he hadn't done a couple things right, and it wasn't Daniel; it was one of the apprentices. And he was a wonderful, godly young man,
Hmm.
and he took me to task. He said, of course, I apologize. He says, that's okay, but this is a pattern, and this is a real problem.
Hmm.
And that was a come to Jesus time for me, and I haven't blown up since. The other time was I was off on a speaking circuit and was gone several days. Came home, and the first thing I said and I when I come home, I kind of do a sachet around the farm and kind of catch up on where are the cows, where's everything, because we
Mhm.
move everything around. You
Yeah.
gotta you got to keep up with where stuff is. And I saw a couple things that I thought were uh, improper, whether it be how they set a water tank or closed a gate or whatever it is. And I'd been gone for I don't know 4 or 5 days. And first thing I said to Daniel, I had this 3 or 4 things that I noticed that were wrong, and he it was not pretty. Um, you know, we held this thing together while you were gone. At least you can do is say, thanks for for taking care of things, and then we can talk about what's not right. And there was another one that I had to humble and apologize. We wept together, we hugged, we kissed. I mean, I'm talking about, a 40-year-old man and a 23-year-old son, or 20,
Yeah.
anyway, 40,
Yeah.
anyway, I don't know what, in my 40s, and he was in his early 20s, and and uh and I've never had that happen again. So
Hmm.
those were two really, really, whatever, seminal times for me, where I had to make an attitudinal adjustment, and it's been good.
Yeah.
Been
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Um, so we've been talking a lot about farming, but I mentioned that these principles go everywhere. A lot of my listeners are not farmers. We're homesteaders, right? And for any of you listeners out there who might disagree with that statement that you're a homesteader, just check out Joel's podcast last week, the Beyond Labels podcast with Dr. Sina McCullough. Joel, you defined a homesteader as anyone who strategically tries to disentangle from the system in any area of their life. So it's a mindset, right? Um, and I want to shift our thinking to that arena to the homesteading arena for a minute. A lot of your book is talking about preventative measures you can do to keep the kids on the farm. But we're in this homestead tsunami, right? So there's new people all the time starting to homestead, and they have families. They might have grown kids, and those people might not all be on board. So, what advice would you give to those people for how to get their families interested and even start living this wonderful life of homesteading?
Oh, wow, that's probably the hardest question that you've sent my way, and I wish I had a good answer, because I see the tension, especially if you if you make the change when the children are older. Uh, um, the idea that, you mean Papa John's Pizza won't deliver out here? What are we going to do at night? And so I think the only thing that so number one, I would just say, you can't force somebody to like what you like. You can't. You can wish it all the world. You can't force somebody to love you. You can't force somebody to like you. You can't force somebody to agree with you.
Yeah.
Uh, and so at the end of the day, um, you need to be gracious. I would say you need to be gracious for the one that doesn't see it yet, because remember, you didn't see it at one time either. And then you need to go ahead on without, whatever prejudicial expectations, uh, for other people. Um, this really was powerful to me. A couple of years ago, Dave Schaefer and I, of Featherman Plucker fame, we were doing a chicken gutting demonstration down at the Homestead Festival for Rory Feek in Columbia, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And we had about 300, people there, 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning, to see us, butcher these chickens. And David asked the crowd, and they were primarily, late 30s to mid to late 40s families with, there were a lot of little kids and some young teens and stuff. And Dave Schaefer asked the crowd, he said, I want to ask a question. He said, how many of you, when you were 16, ever thought that you would want to get up at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning to see a chicken butchered? And in that crowd of 300, two hands went up, two hands. And
Wow.
what this told me, for me, it was an epiphany. It told me that this is something people are coming to later in life.
Yeah.
You have kids, intentional people, like, you grow up trying to meet everybody else's expectations. And of course, most moms and dads, through the 70s, they want you to, grow up, get a good job and make money. And, so you have enough money to put me in the nursing home when I get old. I mean, there's all that stuff going on. But people that have their radar up now, I think, are sensing that the next 40 years is going to be rocky. and I'm not trying to be partisan or political here. I'm just saying if you look at trajectories um, for things, there's a lot to be concerned about. And so people are looking um, for for a parallel universe, a survival, a you know I've had 5 billionaires call me over the last 3 years asking how they can create an agrarian bunker. They don't use the word bunker. They just a safe place. I use the word bunker. That's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
But uh, there's a lot of dysfunction going on, and so realize that your children. So you're a 35-year-old parent with a 12-year-old son or daughter. What you see today, your adult wisdom, you're seeing things, but they're living on TikTok. They're living on a different the unfortunately most of the friends, especially if they're in public school, they're hanging out with all sorts of nefarious philosophies, agendas. They're immersed in um, in a in a short time horizon mentality. You're 35, you're 40, you're starting to get a long-term mentality.
Mm-hmm.
You realize, wow, in 10 years this kid's going to be married, and what kind of world, what kind of life. And so you can't just force that on them. What you can do is be excited and enthusiastic about and become like a child in your own spirit of discovery. That I'm in a new beginning too. I mean, I still remember like yesterday. I don't know, 6 or 7 years old. We had come here to the farm. I was 4 when we moved in. One Sunday afternoon, Dad said, "Let's take this drive. I want to go visit this farmer." I have no idea where it was. I don't know how far away it was. It was a Sunday afternoon. We went and visited this guy, and I don't remember anything about the place. I don't remember the guy. I don't remember what we saw. All I remember was the ride home, and Dad just literally levitating with the excitement of the idea of mobile infrastructure. You never thought of it before.
Yeah.
Well, we could put a building over here, and if I don't like it there in 2 years, I'll move it over here. I mean, he was just euphoric of this. And I
Yeah.
think that we as parents get so hurried, harried, frenetically frenzied about our responsibilities, about frustrations with where our world's headed, that we sometimes lose the capacity to become like 6-year-old excited discoverers again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And James Dobson always said, more is caught than taught. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. Kids will respond to authentic enthusiasm. Um, I just think they will. And so rather than being preachy, rather than being judgmental, rather than being um, uh, what's wrong with you, that sort of thing, let it go. Be gracious. It's okay. Just be gracious, and just be totally uh, um, embrace your own journey, and vocalize that. Wow, I never knew that. Kids love to hear parents say, "I never knew that. I never knew." Wow, you mean, Mom, you're learning something? Yeah, I'm learning something too. They love to hear you say that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you already answered the next question, so I'm just going to skip it. But I have a very detailed question about homesteading in the backyard. Okay, this is actually a question from one of my listeners. So a lot of us small scale backyard homesteaders, we're trying to do a lot with just a little bit of space. And sometimes a big portion of that space is a leach field, for example, in the backyard, right? So what do you recommend doing on a leach field? Do you grow vegetables on it? Would you keep animals on it? Do you have any advice or recommendations for my listeners?
Well, generally, you don't want to grow trees on it
Hmm.
because you don't want the roots to go down in your leach field.
Right.
And so, obviously, if you have an acre or so, it could certainly be grazed with something. If you have an acre or two, but if all you have is a quarter acre lot and you have a leach field, probably the best thing to do with it is to put raised bed, actually build box beds
Hmm.
and go over top of it. Or you could certainly put you know, if your place is that small, you probably don't want to run your chickens out. You're going to want to have them in a coop.
Hmm.
So you could put your deep bedded chicken coop there, or anything deep bed, a lot of carbon. That way, you're not going to add any manure or urine to the leach field. You don't want to do that. And what you'll do is you'll cover it up on top with a whole bunch of carbon, and that will actually be beneficial to the functionality of the whole leach field as it adds humus to it. So those are just a couple of ideas.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's my in the backyard. The thing that I have most with the grass is just there's a leach field, and I run my chickens back across it. So I have a little chicken tractor, and I just run my meat birds back and forth up the yard, and it works great. Um,
Well, you could always mow it and put your volleyball court there,
yeah,
and that'll give you a nice green grass patch to play volleyball on.
yeah. Well, it's funny because we've talked about, man, we could do so much. We could plant everywhere, and no, and my wife's like, nope, the kids need a place to play, and that is
Yeah,
exactly 100% true.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah.
So okay, as we've gone through this, do you have any other stories that have come to mind that you could share about your parents or your kids or your grandkids that might encourage my listeners to keep going and to do everything in their power to bring their kids along with them on that journey?
Oh me. Uh, um, well, I, I would I would say I would say that the opposite of your kids coming along with you is not nearly as pretty as the idea of them coming along with you. And so, um, my mentor, Alan Nation, next to my dad, Alan Nation was my greatest mentor. He was the founder of Stockman Grass Farmer. He's passed away several years ago, but he always said it should be the goal of every person to finally get to a point in their life when you wake up in the morning, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do.
Hmm.
In other words, everything you have to do on your to-do list is stuff that you enjoy doing because you've basically delegated everything else out to other people.
Yeah.
And that sounds a bit selfish, but it's actually extremely unselfish. Like our son Daniel said, he said, delegating is profound because the thing that you really dislike doing, there's probably somebody else, maybe in your own house or down the road, who that thing, if they had to do that today, they just bounce out of bed and couldn't wait to start doing that thing, that you don't want to do. Like, for me, it's changing oil in the car. I used to change it when I was young and we didn't have any money. But boy, I'll tell you, boy, the day I took that car to Jiffy Lube, I mean, man, that was a big day. That we could afford to take that car to Jiffy Lube, and I could just sit there and read a book or read a magazine or something while they were changing the oil in the car.
Yeah.
And so it's that I think because I tell you what, I run into a lot of 60-year-old farmers who, if you say, have you thought about a young person, that family or non-family, but a young person to partner with, to come along. By and large, the response is, "Oh, I can't even imagine having something worse than a young pup tagging along my heels all day, answering their questions and all this stuff." And my response then is, okay, look in the mirror and tell yourself deep in your soul, I really want to get old alone. And if that really is the way you feel, if you really want to get old alone, then yeah, go ahead, be by yourself. But if looking at yourself in the mirror and answering that question, no, I'd really rather like some young blood around here. Uh, whether it's just good friends, cultivate young friends, cultivate young employees, partners, collaborators, whatever it is. Cultivate that youthfulness, and there'll be young people that aren't interested. That's fine. Just go on, because if you have a heart for it, there'll be a young person who is really interested in your woodworking, in your little hobby, in your gardening, in something that you're doing, again, related or unrelated. And as you know, those cross-generational deep relationships, there is something special about multi-generational deep close relationships. The you know to There's just something really special about that. And I mean, we've seen that certainly as the World War II generation starts to, finally, there just aren't very many left. And as they leave, trying to capture them, to the next generation has been quite a thing. And how many times do you hear, well, you know, I never plumbed grandpa's stories, and I'm so sorry now that I didn't plumb those stories. And all of us have those kinds of things. And I would suggest to young people, seek out some older folks. They're probably yearning for some young, enthusiasm in their life. And if there's any, old timers listening, um, it's not too late to show some interest. Pick one, pick two, somebody at church, somebody down the road, some neighbor, pick somebody and mentor them. And to be at this stage in my life with so many young people who um, ask me for advice and who would just move the world for me, um, is better than money. It's better than fame. It's better than anything to know that the satisfaction of pouring my life into these young people, mentoring them, and then watching them just flourish out there. It's just powerful. And I don't think that we push that kind of just very practical, visceral discipleship. We've got programs to disciple people in the Bible, and I'm not trying to just push that aside. I just think that we have maybe dropped the ball in this kind of mentorship, discipleship, cross generational stuff in our practical living.
Great. Joel, thank you so much. It's every time I listen to you speak, it's inspiring. And I'm not just saying that. I appreciate your humility, and just the passion that you have for what you do. It's a wonderful thing. And I hope and pray that my listeners and others pick up on that. And they are. I mean, Joel, you're inspiring a lot of people. So thank you very much. I appreciate you very much. And thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Great. Thanks for having me.